Conversations. Today we have developer Eric WinkelSpecht. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
No man, glad to have you. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah, so to start it off, man, can you give us a little bit of your background and what made you want to get into coding?
Okay. The hitting with the big questions right off the bat. Um, my background. I'm a career changer. Was with a IT solutions provider for 11 years. Did a number of things with that company. If you want to talk about that, we can get into the details there. But um, over time, I just kind of found myself falling out of love with the work I was doing there, certain aspects of it, right? I have a number of years there that I was working as a manager or senior manager or like department leader and really enjoyed like being a coach and being a mentor and creative problem solving. But I don't know, shifts in the culture, things like that just kind of made me feel differently about where I was and didn't really feel like I wanted to spend the rest of my life there. Wanted to find a way, honestly, to work on different kinds of problems that I feel a little bit more passionately about, such as things like, for me, it's environmental issues, climate change, or renewable energies, or sustainability, or even things like mental health and wellness. And my job was more along the lines of like, hey, if your company wants to roll out laptops to their employees, we help you roadmap that whole process and do that thing for you. Doesn't really directly translate to stuff I wanted to eventually try to get into. So I had some experience with software engineering, very, very limited. When I first went to college, I was going for a computer science degree. Quickly transitioned out of that into exercise science and physiology because at the time I was doing personal training. But started thinking about that again as I was kind of on my way out of my last career, and really just fell back in love with it very quickly. Uh, Realized that I've always been a very logical thinker with how I attack problems and really fueled by creative problem solving, and that kind of just meshes really well with software engineering and development. Um, so have been uh, fortunate enough to be able to leave that previous career and dedicate myself full time to the learning journey of moving over into software engineering.
Excellent. How has your experience with finding a job been so far?
It is tough. It's very challenging. I have gone through phases. I think, like I did the self taught thing, right? So like a lot of us, I've done some Udemy courses, and then right after the Udemy like boot camp course or whatever it is, you're like, cool, I know this stuff. I can go out and get a job. But I didn't start applying right away. I built some projects, and then throughout those projects, started doing the cold apply approach. So it was just sending out resumes. And at the time when I first started doing that, my resume was really just like, hey, I'm learning this stuff, and here's all of my previous experience, right? Because that's what I had to lean on, really. And it's just, rejection after rejection after rejection from sending out those resumes. Like, it's just a piece of paper, right? It's not a face or a personality or actual experience behind it, really. You look and kind of see the qualifications for the job you're applying to and what's listed on that paper. And if it's not a one to one relationship, most times you're just going to get passed right over. So I've realized that more as time has gone on. And I have been focusing much more on networking and trying to reach out and create conversations. And, as you know, I've really spent a lot of time over the past, I don't know, few months, really. I think like since October, maybe October, November in earnest, just more focused on LinkedIn and really putting myself out there and just showing what I'm doing and who I am and the things that I'm working on and what I'm learning and what I'm building. It's been a really encouraging process finding the community on LinkedIn. I still don't have like what I would say is a ready to go job prospect right now, but I've had a number of folks that have, discovered me and said like, "Hey, either I have already recommended you or I plan to recommend you." A lot of companies that I'm aware of are still like going through their headcount processes now. But the fact that I'm getting some recommendations now is just far and away beyond what I expected at this point in time. I really expected to still have to be sending out, resumes like crazy to get any kind of traction. So it's on an upswing. Like I feel like I've got that momentum and things are moving forward. Just taking a bit of time to get there.
Yeah, man, that's definitely how the process is for most developers. Putting in hundreds of applications, trying different techniques to get into the door. I know a lot of people feel discouraged. How do you keep your spirits up when facing all that rejection?
Oh, it's tough, man. It's definitely discouraging. There have for sure been days where I have felt so down about this process that I've sort of questioned if I should keep going with it. I think pretty confidently say I can go out and based on just the 11 years I spent at a previous company, use that and get a similar job somewhere doing something similar. But I don't really want that and I want to be true to myself. So that's one thing that I keep kind of going back to is like, what am I really doing this for? Am I doing this just to be a career changer and just to say I did it? No. I'm doing this really as a path to get to where I want to be and do something radically different with my life. And hopefully in the future, work on problems that I'm really, just really passionate about and want to be a part of. And there's definitely, those days where you have to look back and look at your own journey so far, right? And really sit yourself down and say, like, okay, cool. I know I'm good enough to do this thing because look at where I came from and not knowing how to do any single line of code. And now today I can, pick up a whole different framework or start learning like React Native and it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, okay, cool, I'm capable of this stuff. And the other thing has really been community. Like I'm glad I found community on LinkedIn because if I was still doing this thing solo like I was for the first large chunk of my learning journey, I don't know how well I'd hang in there, because you see other people going through the same thing and you can relate and you want to communicate on those things and you have those conversations. It's just like, hey, I get how you're feeling. I feel that same way. Um, and it's weird. I think a big thing I've been doing has been like just being vocal about those days and those feelings, right? Uh, Posting about that on LinkedIn, which is a little scary sometimes because some days I put those things up and I'm just like, this post is really for me and just as a reminder to myself that like I'm gonna have these bad days and I want to talk myself through it. And I'm sure there are other people out there that need that kind of post that need to see it because I see other people's posts and I'm like, yeah, I needed this today. So it's a lot of different techniques that kind of all blend together.
Yeah, man. I would say don't get discouraged, man, because I seen your portfolio. You definitely got the skills. It's just like the state of the industry. So what I had to do was learn not to take the rejection personal. I remember
Yeah.
back in the day, even when the market was so-called hot, I had to put in countless applications, but I had to reprogram my mind and make it into like a game. Like I'm gonna get 10 failures today, and you
Aim for
know,
those failures.
yeah,
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 and thank you for saying that, man. Like I've spoken to a number of developers and folks in senior positions who give me like the same kind of feedback where they're like, "Hey, man, I see what you're doing and you're good. Like you are job ready." And that feels awesome to hear. Then I have the alternate side of things where like if I'm reaching out and cold applying, I just get rejection. So like I'm definitely at that phase where, I'm still going to send out applications in the cold apply method, but it's definitely not my priority. Like my priority is more like, let me continue building a network on LinkedIn. Let me continue to meet and have conversations with people and make those personal connections versus just send
yeah.
an application. I'll be one of 300 people in the first 20 minutes that thing is open, right?
Absolutely. I see you've been kind of building a brand on LinkedIn, posting videos of what you're doing. You got the podcast going. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. It definitely started from a place of just me wanting to get practice for interviews. So, doing the solo learning thing and kind of over time, like I definitely didn't know what the process was of getting interviews and going through interviews, right? Where like, some of it can be very intense. Some of them are just, hey, show us your project and let's talk about it. Some of them are take home things, right? But some of them are like code in front of me and solve these problems. So as I learned about that, I was like, oh, I really need to just get better at talking about what I'm doing and explaining my thought process and what my problem solving out loud as I'm doing it. So I knew I had to build in public because I kept hearing build in public, learn in public, build in public. And I wasn't sure how to start. So I heard a lot of good things about people doing it through Twitch. So, but that was my first attempt. I was like, let me go on Twitch, let me do a live stream, and let me just try to start this project. Um, I've done a lot of like front end mentor stuff, so I picked one of those projects, and I was like, I'll just start streaming this thing. So I set up a Twitch account and I start streaming, and a number of people were kind enough to join and start a conversation. It was super cool. And then like at some point during that process, I hit a problem that I needed to Google something to look up and find a solution for. And the streaming process just crushed my internet so hard that I couldn't Google anything. Nothing would show up. So then I was like, I can't do this. This isn't going to work for me because it's going to kill my productivity. I'm going to get stuck. I'm going to get frustrated, and it's just not the right answer for me. So then I was like, all right, well, if I can't do this live, let me at least just record myself still doing it and put things up on YouTube. So I started at that point just by doing like my own little code review stuff where I just kind of looked through and I was like, here's a thing I wrote, and you know, here's some of the lines I did, and here's how it works. I put up like a video or two on a previous project, and I was like, that's cool, that's fun. It's working well enough. It gave me some experience with like just recording, speaking, editing, and putting things up online. And then I came across a post on LinkedIn, which actually Matt's one of Matt's posts, my co-host on Self-Taught Devs, and he had said something like basically making a comment about tutorials and things he had seen online where people would be like, oh, let's build Flappy Bird today. And they would just code like every single file straight from top to bottom, not hit any errors. They're clearly like looking off screen and, retyping code they already did before. And his comment was basically like, hey, I don't like this because it's not super realistic on what the development process is actually like. And it creates like false expectations. And I'm reading that and I'm like, this is true. And it hit me, and I was just like, yeah, I could just do this, right? I could just record myself doing the thing and making mistakes and talk about it as I'm going, and that's the practice I want, right? So then I just kind of started doing it, and I was like, let me just record these videos and put them up. And I don't know, I'm not out there trying to change the world or like really like create tutorials and stuff. This is my project, and watch me do it. If you want to watch me do it, cool. It's mainly for my own practice. And then as I started doing that, I was like, well, I need to, you'll start reading things about being successful on YouTube. And I'm like, I don't expect to get like hundreds of thousands of followers, but I want it to look nice. I'm going to use this for my own resume, right? If I send something out to a company and I want them to see who I am, I want them to see that I'm doing this kind of thing. It's going to play in my favor. So then I started kind of messing that up a little bit and saying like, how do I make this look good? What do I, do I have an image of myself? How do I brand myself in this thing? And you start thinking about branding. And then as I was doing that, that's when I started posting a little bit more on LinkedIn. And then you start seeing like, oh, you should have all your images across all your social medias be the same exact thing, and really create your personal brand and maybe have your color scheme and things like that. And then I just kind of started doing that, and I don't know, it all just kind of came sort of naturally. And the podcast came about the same kind of way, where Matt and I, we had been chatting back and forth on LinkedIn. And then we basically just said like, we saw each other's YouTube videos. Matt was doing the same thing. And we were like, hey, we should like collaborate on something. That could be a fun little project for us to do. Just whatever. Let's just get together and like talk. That was basically our main goal. We're like, let's just do a video that we'll put up on somebody's YouTube, and we'll just talk to each other and just learn about each other and record our first conversation. That could be fun. And then we do it, and we're like, that was really way more fun than I thought it was going to be. And we should just do this more often. And then we just had the idea, we're like, let's just make it a podcast and let's just start doing it every week. And we'll either talk about topics that, as self-taught developers, both of us, we're struggling with, that we think are good for people to listen to and get feedback on, or we'll interview people that are out there doing the things that we are trying to do and highlight those folks. And now here we are, right? We're doing the podcast every week. I've slowed down a little bit on the YouTube stuff just because it's very time consuming and it's hard to do all of it. So I'm trying to establish different goals, right? Like I really wanted to do, a code with me series where any project I'm doing, I'm recording in, and putting those up. And then I was also trying to do a documentation nation series, which I still really love the idea of, but it's just, I don't think super engaging at the end of the day. It was mainly for me going through and reading documentation and getting better at that process, and also reading code and getting better at reading code. And it helped. I still have some videos I need to edit and post, but like doing it helped a lot And I love the process of editing too, like video editing. That's just so much fun. So really, all this stuff, I'm hoping I'm answering the question. It was all just, what's the fun thing I can do that's going to help me show what I'm doing and show what I'm learning and put myself out there? How can I do something that's enjoyable, that will be a benefit to me, maybe a benefit to others if they watch along with it, and just keep on going with that and be creative and have fun.
Absolutely. Alexander asked the question. I can answer it first, and then I'd like to get your opinion on it. He says,
Yeah.
totally true. People say you're ready, but how do you show a company recruiter that you're ready? So I would say to this question, we just have to be honest that most companies, they don't want to hire junior developers because in their mind it's expensive to train them. And then once, they get to a point where they're productive, they're probably going to jump to another company. So what they want is somebody who can hit the ground running. Like you have to almost come in as a mid-level developer, but technically you're a junior, like they kind of want somebody who already knows how to just kind of come into the code base and start contributing. And how you can show them you're ready is just have projects that you're constantly working on. I would say freelancing is a good option for a lot of people. Like maybe a church needs a website, or there's a lot of different people that need websites, and it might not pay a bunch, but you can literally use that as experience on your resume. You can say, hey, I'm a consultant. I'm not a junior developer, per se. I'm a consultant with like a year, 2 years experience. Here's some of the projects I've worked on. Like you got to kind of use creative ways to get experience. Like my co-host Terrence, he was working at this company doing Shopify, like PHP, that kind of stuff. And in order for him to get his React skills up, he had to pick up a unpaid React project outside of work. And he kind of combined his management experience at his job with him actually doing React on a project outside of work to be able to package himself uh, and get a lead dev job at his next job. So you got to find like creative ways to get experience. If the opportunity doesn't exist, you create the opportunity. Like get some junior developers together, say, hey guys, let's work on a project together, and then they'll try to deploy it like that. That also demonstrates that you have leadership skills as well. So say like we're in the age where there's so much saturation, everybody wants in on the industry, so you really have to be creative. How about you? What would you say? How would you answer that question?
Yeah, I think everything you gave is great advice, right? You have to have the projects available that you can speak through in an intelligent way, using the right terminology and using, I guess the right kind of show the right kind of understanding of your code, right? If you got a project that you put together, how does somebody out there know that it's not just something you were Googling nonstop or, following along with a tutorial? And do you really understand what that code is doing? I don't think I can say anything more specific about, the code side of things. I think you covered a lot of it. I also think though that like, what does it mean to be ready to work with a team, right? As a junior developer, you're not going to be doing the solo thing forever. You need to be teachable. You need to be humble. You can't go in there with an ego, right? You need to show that you are capable of learning. I think regardless of your background, if you did the boot camp thing, if you did the CS degree, if you do self-taught, you show that you're capable of learning because you bring those skills. But what else do you already have besides coding that's going to show somebody that you are a good collaborative problem solver, right? Do you have previous experience in a different job? Do you have previous experience in a club from school or something where you were able to work with a team to accomplish a goal, right? Those things matter. It's not all just about your technical skill. That plays a big role into it, right? But it's also about how are you as a person to work with? How can you show that that personality that you bring, that unique skill set or insight that you're going to bring to a problem that you're going to help solve with the team? And also like how reliable are you as an individual that you can show this person that like, look, I am worthy of your investment in me coming into this opportunity. I am worthy of, your trust that you can bring me onto this team, and I'm going to actively put myself out there, not to just be the candidate that I'm showing you that I am now, but to be the person that I'm expecting myself to grow into on this team and develop my own skill sets, this definitely isn't an easy thing to do, right? But you can't just tell somebody straight up like, "Hey, trust me, I'm going to be really great on your team." I think it's the drive, right? How can you show somebody that you really want this thing and show that you are honest about where you are today, but focused on where you want to be and knowing how you can get there and having shown maybe like, have you already talked to seniors? Have you already gotten feedback from other folks that you've put into your own day-to-day process, right? Talk about those things. Hey, I met with such and such developer at whatever company. He kind of been a little bit of a mentor to me. He gave me this kind of feedback and asked me to do this and this. So that's what I spent time doing over the past couple of months. And here's what I've learned from it. Those types of stories, I think, go a long way.
Absolutely. So yeah, speaking of projects, can you tell us about some of the projects that you've actually worked on?
Sure. The first one that I did was called Charge Buddy, which I did like the Udemy bootcamp courses, right? And I was like, cool, I'm ready. I've got this full stack thing down. I'm going to go make an application. And being interested in like the EV technologies, electric vehicle technologies, I made an application where it's basically just like a Google Maps app where you can put in your address and or hit your like find me location, and it'll show you calls out to an external API and pulls in data that displays EV charging stations on the map. And then you can click on those stations, you can give them a rating, you can comment, whatever. Um, I'd used, Bootstrap for that one. And it was fun to build because it really taught me a lot about all the front end stuff, all the back end stuff, really kind of solidified a lot of that knowledge I picked up doing the Udemy courses. And after I did that one, I was like, cool, all right, I got to keep building. What's next? And then I have an idea to do some application. I had some like drawings in a notebook, and I'm like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to map this thing out and really make it looking pretty. And then I sit down and I try to code something, and I'm like, I don't have any idea how to really like make this look the way I want it to look without relying on something like Bootstrap. So then I ended up doing a lot of research and finding Front End Mentor, which I really like as a resource to gain a lot of front end skills. Sort of doing those challenges to really brush up on like CSS and not just relying on a UI framework. I did a number of those challenges. The ones that I'm really proud of, I did a lot of like the little components, like the junior level challenges that they have. Um, One of them that I'm really proud of, one of the more advanced ones, was the Connect 4 application,
Mm.
which that was just super fun. And I had so much momentum as I went through that project because I had done like a tic-tac-toe thing at some point through my learning. And I think at the time I did it was just like a gigantic nested if statement with like all the different, like, if there's a thing here, check these, and going down an if statement that way. And I was like, I'm going to do a Connect 4 board. There's a lot more spaces there. And I really need to figure out a different way to handle that and understand how I'm going to traverse that board, and how do we know what values are there, and how do I find winning pieces and things like that. Uh, I had been going through like some DSA learning at the time, and I was really getting a better handle on like some of the algorithms of like um, traversing different data structures, right? And that was just super fun for me to just have the idea of like, oh, okay, I'm going to make this thing an array of objects, and we'll just kind of map through them, and that'll lay out my whole board. And each object's going to have, whatever properties it has to display the value of the player and whatever else. But then I thought of the idea of like, oh, I can just um, have properties that point in different directions and have a function that I tell the direction we want to map through or go through and find the values of the pieces. And regardless, I'm getting in the weeds, but that was just super fun to go through. And it's like making a game. Making a game was cool. The most recent project that I did, the Kanban task tracker, that was a really fun one too, which I didn't do a whole full stack thing for that. I just did a front end for it. Um, Really taught me a lot about working with deeply nested state in React, right? About immutability in state and how to handle that, and different libraries that exist to also help you handle that, rather than trying to go through and like, use your spread syntax on every single level of your state to try to copy things over. A lot of fun there. mainly I've been working in React on a lot of my projects. I did opt to use Svelte on one of them, which was like an invoicing application. And the experience of using Svelte was fun because it was just like, oh, I understand JavaScript and I understand React, and then hopping over to a different framework was very easy, surprisingly, at the time. I didn't really expect it to be. I thought it was going to be a lot harder for me. Um, so that one was a fun one to work on. And now I'm trying to learn React Native to build a whole new application, just mobile application for my next project, which will be a completely unique, ground up, custom application. So that's in process.
Well, yeah, I looked at your projects, man. They seem like really advanced, something at least mid-level and above. So my advice, I don't know if you're doing this or not, but I would say stop marketing yourself as a junior developer and just put a React developer and sell your projects are literally your experience. You can
Mhm.
talk about, I did this project, I learned X, Y, and Z, because ultimately companies, they just want somebody to come in here and be able to run. So yeah, do you write unit tests for your projects?
Unit testing isn't something that I started doing until recently. Started really diving into test-driven development and did some coursework on that. And man, I fell in love with it immediately. That's going to be a huge focus of mine for this next application I'm going to build, is using test-driven development for that process. It totally changed the way I think about attacking a problem when it comes to coding, right? So previously, like, I'd accept the challenge and I'd say, this is the project I'm going to build and this is the functionality it needs to have. And I would have a general idea going into it of like, okay, I can do this, this, and this, and these are the things I know how to handle. So let's just start working. And I would dive in and start building stuff. And then I would do, I don't know if there's a better term for it, but I would do a lot of what's called component hopping, where I'd build something in one component and then I'd go somewhere else and complete that functionality. And I'd kind of hop around solving the problems that come up as they come up. But then when I started learning test driven development and seeing like, oh, I can just sit down and I can look at this one component in isolation and I can understand exactly what it should receive, if it's accepting props or whatever, the kind of information it should receive, what it should be doing with it, how it should send data back out, and just focus on that one thing and understand all the requirements and code this thing out in a way that's way more like isolated, like modular, right? They call it modular and loosely coupled when you think about like test driven
Mhm.
development stuff. And just looking at and understanding how that works just made me so much more excited about the next stuff I'm going to build, because it's like, wow, I can do this in a way and write tests in a way that um, makes this so much easier to understand and work with. And man, it's just going to be a lot more fun to dive into. I don't know if I lost Kevin here.
Oh no, I'm still here though. My
You
camera
got
just
a
cut off for whatever reason. The
cool,
battery
man.
died, but
There he is.
there we go. Okay, but yeah, man. Yeah, you really have a very in-depth knowledge of coding, man. I think you know, just me coming across the right person, that's really going to be your key to getting a
Yeah.
job, because you know what you're doing. I really feel like you can come in and contribute to a team immediately. Um, so like, okay, here's some of the kind of questions they ask on the interview. Like, I just want to get your opinion on it. Okay, say there's a problem, you and another dev, you're discussing on how to solve it, and you both have two different approaches. You kind of have a disagreement. So how would you go about resolving that so both you can get on the same page and move
Hmm.
forward and pick a solution?
It's, if we're speaking in broad strokes here, right? Like, there's always going to be disagreements on ways forward. And this is, I have over 11 years of a previous career, have solved numerous problems, and have worked with a lot of people who are either super easygoing and just want to hear your opinions on things and trust your judgment and want to go, or have their own very strong opinions on how things need to be handled. And sometimes there's a middle ground that you find where you're able to say, like, all right, we can take pieces of both of these solutions and make this thing work. Other times, you need to kind of step back a little bit more, and you need to work with that person in a way that is a little more conducive to their particular style, right? For me personally, like, if I'm in this situation, I'm going to believe that I'm the junior here, and I probably have the less of a tenure in this whole situation. I always look at anything as a learning experience, right? where, hey, I might have some ideas, I might have some preconceived notions on how I think this thing is supposed to go, and I want to understand why this other person has their ideas, right? I don't want to immediately discount what someone else is bringing to the table just because I think I have something that could work and probably maybe could work well, right? But what is this person thinking about that's influencing their decision, right? I'm not going to jump to conclusions and think they're wrong. I want to ask those questions. I want them to teach me more about what their approach is here. Teach me more about how you're looking at this problem. Help me understand your perspective on this thing, right? We're not necessarily trying to find out who's right or who's wrong on this thing, but let's just have a deeper discussion about this problem overall, right? Give me your perspective. I want to learn. I want to look at different ways to attack this problem. And I don't want to already fall into this trap of like, hey, I've got a thing. Let's just work on this one thing and make this work, right? So, um, I don't know. I don't think there's like a best approach, but I'm always somebody that's looking to just be completely open and gain more feedback and gain more knowledge. And guess what? If we go and do something and it's not the right way, we're going to fail on that thing together, right? We're not going to come out of this problem and say like, oh, this person came up with this idea, so it's his fault now that we fall behind on this thing. We're going to make a decision on this together. We're going to agree on what we do moving forward. And if it's the wrong thing, okay, we made that decision together. Let's just remember that as a team here, this is our responsibility, not just your responsibility or mine.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Great answer. Jason Cavness asks, I know y'all are talking about how junior devs can find their first paying role, but let's reverse it. Can you talk about how a non-tech founder with limited funds can convince a junior to join his team? So, okay, what will make you want to join a team where there's limited funds, like maybe like a side project or something?
Mm. I think the first thing that jumps to my mind is the kind of work, right? How appealing is it? What kinds of problems would we be working on, right? If it's something that I personally connect with, yeah, I'd be excited about doing that, even if it wasn't necessarily like the highest paying thing, or if there was like the opportunity to turn into something bigger in the future. If I could be a part of something that makes sense to me, was where I want to spend my time, yeah, that's number one. I guess the other part is what where is the benefit to me in this scenario, right? Like
Mhm.
if I'm in the position I'm in right now, where I'm trying to go through and find a full-time job, I'm trying to find a paying role. Am I confident that this is going to turn into something that's really worth my time investment? Can I be funded in a way that's going to allow me to continue to live and survive while doing this thing? Or is this going to be a project for me that's going to be something for my portfolio, right? Can I take this thing and show other
Yep.
potential employers that I had experience helping build this project that's going to potentially turn into something else in the future that maybe I won't be involved in? Maybe this is just my minimal involvement in it up to this point because I need to use this thing as a stepping stone because it doesn't meet my criteria on a timeline as what's going to support me financially, but I still want to be involved. How am I going to benefit from this thing, right? What's really going to be the reason to hook me in?
Yep. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, man. Like I mentioned, my co-host, he kind of worked on a unpaid project to get experience in React. And I guess the big benefit for him was being around senior developers, learning how
Mm,
to code in a professional environment, kind of go through the process of uh, committing your code, having to go through code review. If they don't like it, they leave the comments, pretty much a professional process. I'll say that would be the big advantage. But
mhm,
and like you mentioned, you can also put it on your resume for experience because, even though it's not technically paid or paid a lot, that's still job experience. And I think that's the big benefit is, companies want to see that you have some sort of job experience. But yeah, I can also see like if you're not aligned with the mission or, it's not, you need to get paid now, then it might not make sense. But I would say like if it comes down to like just working on whatever your own project versus working on a project that's not necessarily paid, but it's with a company, I would lean towards that
mhm.
because you literally have a company you could point to say, hey, I worked on this, come check it out. Like, like
Yeah. That's also one of the things I need to start looking for, right? Is like volunteer work, right? I had a conversation with somebody
yep.
recently about that, and I think it's a really great idea to find like a volunteer organization or folks that do code for volunteer and work on something, right, with another team, and that is more experience, like you're saying, even though you're not getting paid for it, you're at that point a working developer, right, working on a real world project with a team for whatever the problem might be, but it's more experience.
Exactly. And, at the end of the day, that's really what companies are looking for. Can you demonstrate to me that you know how to come in here and get to work? And, you know, they're not really looking at your previous salary like that. They're just looking at what you did at the job. Um, so yeah, like going forward, are you gonna change? Like you kind of mentioned, you're more so networking. Can you talk about that? Like, what are you doing exactly?
Whew, networking has been an evolution for me. Um, and it's still trying to find out what, how to split my days where my time is best spent. But at the moment, networking for me, a lot of LinkedIn stuff, right? Primarily LinkedIn stuff. Trying to post as often as I can. I don't know that I'm one of those people that can post every single day, but I definitely try to post as many days as I can, just one time, right? I don't want to go doing like multiple posts a day. It just doesn't work for me. I don't have enough that I want to say, but I'm trying my best to either talk about what I'm learning or what I'm building or how I'm feeling about the process, right? Because that people out there connect with that, and you want to be, at least I want to be honest and how I'm feeling. And sometimes I need to write those personal reminders for myself, and that seems to be doing well with just people connecting and commenting and wanting to communicate and be involved in the conversation. Some people are finding value in the things I put out or learning things from the things I put out, which is awesome. I am doing my best to reach out to others, right, at companies that I'm interested in, where I would like to be a contributor, whether it's reaching out to someone at the developer role or the senior role or the hiring manager role. I have been enjoying generating those conversations and just hearing feedback from people that actually work at those companies. It doesn't really do anything if you just start mass sending out connection requests without any kind of meaning behind it.
Mhm.
You can do that for sure. You're going to have more connections, and that's okay, I guess, right? Maybe those people over time will start to see you and get more familiar with what you're doing. And that's cool. But if you make a bigger connection from the start, it's a lot, it provides a lot more benefit, right? Not, I'm not just trying to connect with people just to have a network, but I'm trying to connect with people so I have opportunities to learn from others, to show people what I'm doing, to participate in that community. You know, I think, you know, if I could give one piece of advice as far as networking is concerned, it's do your networking for the right reasons and be as genuine as you can in that process, right? It's not really just about having the biggest network possible. It's about showing people who you are and reaching out to somebody with the purpose, right? Like, don't just reach out to a
I think we lost them. Let's see. Hey, Eric, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Am I
Okay, yeah,
back?
yeah. Just cut out a little
Woo,
bit, but okay, there we
whew. All right. Well, my line of thought here was just like, I don't know. I see a lot of different advice out there as far as how you should network. Um, I don't think asking for a job is the right way to network with people, but I think asking for advice or feedback or a conversation is a better way to network with people. Um, whether that is just through LinkedIn chat or if they're willing to have a video call or whatever it might be, make that conversation because it's gonna do a lot more for you in the long term and look for those opportunities to learn from other people and not just try to get favors from folks out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people, they kind of have social anxiety. I know originally I used to have a lot of social anxiety. So how's your experiences actually like just messaging people, DMing them? Like I know a lot of people kind of imagine, oh, I'm gonna get a rude response or.
Yeah. To the comment of social anxiety, man, I don't know. I've been mixed on that, right? Because at first, reaching out, just cold reaching out to people and being like, "Hey, here's who I am and what I'm doing. Can we talk?" It definitely was intimidating at first because I didn't know what kind of response to expect, right? I wasn't really involved in this community. I didn't really see the kind of positivity that's out there. Um, even though I'm not a shy person, I've Like I've said at the top, like I had 11-year career, and 8 plus of those was in different levels of management. And I've had very, you know, challenging conversations. Have to put myself out there, have to be a very big personality in a lot of situations. So like I'm comfortable speaking with people and generating conversations with those I don't know about. I had to interview tons of people and make connections with folks for the first time. So I've been fine with that aspect, but still just reaching out, sending a message to somebody and be like, hey, you have no idea who I am. Can you please give me 30 minutes of your time? Felt a little bit different, right? Because it was kind of like for me, the tables were reversed here. It was flipped around, me reaching out to people and trying to ask for their time. Um, it's been a good experience though, right? Because like I'm getting one of two responses. Either I don't get a response because maybe that person just isn't on LinkedIn very frequently, or I get a response that's like, hey, yeah, cool, you can ask me questions, go for it. And sometimes that turns into a call and sometimes that doesn't, and that's fine, right? But I never really get a response from anybody that just is like, hey, I'm too busy, leave me alone. No
Yeah.
one ever comes back with like the jerk response, right? It seems like, and give me your perspective on this too, Kevin. I'd love to hear it, but like anybody in this field, in the software engineering field, they all remember the struggle to get to where they are, right? And I don't think there's anybody out there who's like, man, I wish I had less help doing this thing. I don't think there's anybody out there who says like, if I have a few minutes to give to somebody, then I'm just not going to do it because to hell with them, like let them make their own way. There's not, I'm sure they exist, but there's not really too many of them out there in the community from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think a big fear that we have is mostly imaginary. Like we kind of think that somebody's gonna be rude, they're gonna cuss us out, or we're bothering them. But I find like especially a lot of seniors they want to share their advice. Especially if the junior comes at them respectfully, like, "Hey, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Like, as long as you're respectful and you're kind of direct, you're not wasting their time. I find most seniors or architects or whatever, they're open. They really want to share their knowledge. They really want to help, and they
Mhm.
really love seeing people who are diligent about progressing their career. Like, I think really what helps is asking like targeted questions. Like you've shown you've done your research on some things and you preface your question with that, like, um, I was having I'm having a problem with such and such. I've tried this out. What do you think about this issue? Kind of showcase that you're serious. You're not just like hitting them up and spamming them with random questions, but you've done your research, and
Mhm.
I find that they really enjoy that. Because like even with recruiters, if you have somebody that they send you a job listing and the template doesn't fully render, then you see the brackets and then first name dash last name, like they're just spamming your inbox with a template. You're gonna be like,
Mhm.
put this in the trash.
Yeah. The other thing about, just LinkedIn stuff that I like, when you talk about reaching out to people and asking questions, you don't have to make those to specific people, right? The
Yeah.
over time as you build a network and you have more people that see the stuff that you do, right? You post more regularly, you're going to get some amount of people that connect with you and want to follow your stuff and want to see what you're doing. You can put your questions out just to your network, right? And I'm doing that practice a little bit more and just asking people's opinions on things or asking people's feedback or like putting out open calls to say like I know I did a post a while back where I was just like, hey, I finished this project and I just want feedback, right? I never really had like a formalized code review from like a senior on a big project, but um, anybody out there want to hop on a call with me and just look at this thing and just rip it apart with me and just give me any advice that you have about this whole project. And people volunteered and they said, hey, yeah, I'll help you out, let's schedule a time. And I think I did like, I don't know, 6 or 7 of those conversations, and everybody gave me different, unique feedback. And it was a super awesome experience to have. So over time, if you have that network of folks that are out there that are seeing what you do, like don't be afraid to just mass message out. I don't think anybody's going to come back to be like, you don't know what you're doing. Just leave us all alone. Like people are the
Mm,
good people out there are going to come and want to help you out and want to help you develop.
absolutely, man. There's an incredible power in community, man. That I think like with me doing a podcast, it's not like me having these so-called numbers and so-called views. It's more so of just the people I've met. That's been like the most important thing. You don't realize how like generous a lot of people are, especially in coding. There's so much stuff that's free. Like literally your whole tool chain can be free. Your whole education is free. Like
Mhm.
I don't know any other community that gives like so much free stuff. Like there's so much generosity in this community. It's really just being brave enough to step out and reach out. But yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have any questions for me?
Ooh, all right. I can turn it out here. Um, well, first of all, Kevin, it's been cool getting to know you over the past like couple weeks, right? In our conversation, and thank you for guesting on Self-Taught Devs a while back. Um, I would love to hear your perspective on what you look for in junior developers, right?
Mhm.
Because we've had a little bit of that conversation, right? Of like, how do I show somebody that I'm ready? How do I go out there and prove to somebody that I can do this job? What would be like your ideal junior developer, right? Let's say like give me a version that is language agnostic, right? Because yeah, I want this person to have some technical skills. We know that's necessary. What are you looking for in soft skills with people?
Sure. So I would say the big thing is you have to be someone that is willing to learn. Like a lot of people they act like they know it all. So just because someone is a senior doesn't mean that they're right. But somebody who's been in the industry a long time, they kind of know the pitfalls and this and that. They have a perspective that someone who's more junior they may not have. So having somebody who's willing to listen, like hey, what do you think on this issue? And this might be contrary to what a lot of juniors think. There's nothing wrong with defending your position, like if you're right, because right is right and wrong is wrong. The amount of years doesn't really matter. So being able to stand on your viewpoint and defend it respectfully, like, hey, this is why I did this. What do you think about that? Like, it's just really communicating respectfully. Like, none of us, like you mentioned before, you made a good point. Like, we're here to solve a problem and we're doing it together. You know what I mean? It's not about me putting my solution or you putting your solution. It's all about, hey, let's find the best solution. And we're never, nobody's ever 100% right. Nobody always has the best answer. So as a junior, just being able to talk to a junior, get into his mind or her mind, and they should be able to contribute on the conversation as well. Like, what do you think about this problem? How would you go about solving this problem? And then you're able, even if you don't have the experience, you should be able to at least like attempt an answer.
Mhm.
I would say another thing is it's always important to showcase that you love to learn, because this is a learning industry. Like you don't want to be like, oh, I'm just here, I'm gonna do my job and I clock out. Like you can talk about the passion you have some for some of the projects you've done outside work. Like, hey, I made this Connect 4, I learned X, Y, and Z. Like, I think that would be something to really focus on your LinkedIn profile and your resume. I talked with Diego. He's a recruiter, and one thing he mentioned is like he really wants to see like people flesh out what they're doing and how it's going to bring value to a business. Like I believe a mistake a lot of people make is they look at their LinkedIn and resume as kind of like a who's who, a chronological thing of everything I've done, whereas it's more so like an advertisement for what you want to get, right? Like um, McDonald's, they don't say, Ray Kroc started this in XYZ when they're trying to sell you a hamburger. They show you a delicious picture of a hamburger, and they put all these descriptive adjectives. So what sells Sizzle to hiring managers and just other developers is you really elaborating on what you're doing and how that's solving the problem. So for example, say you have a project where you did unit tests. On your resume you said on X project, I wanted to ensure that it's thoroughly testable and that somebody can come in and work on this after me. Therefore, I made sure to get 80% test coverage, because stuff like that showcases that you're ready to come in and you're ready to contribute. That's really what looks impressive.
Mhm. Yeah, you're a product, right? You are the product you are trying to sell to
Exactly.
the potential employers out there. So do your best and build your brand and make sure you are uh, recognizable not for what you have done, but what for your potential is to do and the things that you know you're capable of doing and what you can promise that you can do in that position you're trying to get.
Exactly. That's something that everybody needs to start thinking about. We're all brands. Like a lot of people just, especially as engineers, we just want to come in, solve the problem, and go home. But especially in the age where it's increasingly more saturated,
Hmm.
we have to realize we're products, and the companies are looking to buy. What makes you, there's like 10,000 sodas on when you go to a grocery store. What makes you pick one above the other? Like a lot of times it's familiarity, and that familiarity is spread through great marketing. Like it has a
Hmm.
beautiful packaging. You've seen the reviews. It's like word of mouth, stuff like that. So being really involved in the LinkedIn community and people saying, hey, this guy is good, that's going to start spreading. And it's even things like, you put out the YouTube video, you're showcasing your personality. Like I think this is something that I had to come to terms with myself, is that um, a lot of the work you put in is like planting a tree. You're
Hmm.
not going to get the fruit the next day. You just have to learn to love the process. Like me and Terrence, we've been doing a podcast for over a year, and for that first year, we were getting 0 views, 1 views, etc. But each episode, we're looking for things to improve. We're looking for ways to get better, and it's sort of like that with a junior trying to find a job. Like all of the networking you're doing, you're not gonna like one day later, have 50 guys in your inbox say, "Hey, come work for me." But they see you on LinkedIn every day talking about code. They see you posting videos. They see you actively engaged. It's slowly going to build your following and build your visibility. And people see that you're competent. And that's really what's going to make you stand out. Like, hey, who is this guy? Why isn't he working at our company? Let me reach out to him. So, yeah, man, marketing and branding is something that we all have to take serious. Like,
Hmm.
you know, there's a lot of people that can essentially do the same thing. They can all do the job. So what's going to make one guy stand out versus the next?
Yeah.
And that's really how seriously you take your brand.
People hire people, right? They don't hire a piece of
Exactly.
paper that says you can do a job. They hire a person. So how do you show somebody who you are?
Exactly. So, did you have any other questions?
Oh man, this has been fun. I've enjoyed being on here with you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And yet, to all the recruiters, anybody who's looking to hire, man, you got to get this guy on your team. So, where can people find you at?
The probably the easiest place to find everything that I'm doing is my portfolio is ericwink.dev. It's ERICWINK.dev. That has my links out to LinkedIn. You can find the podcast from there, Self-Taught Devs. Uh, Most active on LinkedIn, so find me there and follow my posts and reach out to me. I'm open to talk to anybody and have some fun conversations.
Oh man, I definitely appreciate you for stopping by, and thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next time.